when I look at, and now I'm not talking about myself, but when I look at porn today and I see all the stepbrother, stepsister, stepmom stuff, I go, this cannot be by accident. Like there has to be something going on here. And I wonder if it is this, not necessarily desire to be with your mom or your brother or your sister, but these like the inability to ever resolve the tension of like, I love this person and I want to touch them and I want to be with them, but I also can't. And I can't even think about that because that would make me fucking disgusting. So, it's a steps person on a porn website. Now that's like, I think one of the most popular categories. Well, I guess I sort of know the answer. How do you understand fetishes in that? Do fetishes you think are just genes, biology, they come up like that? Like, why do we see this rise of step porn today?
Well, my guess is that it actually wants to be real porn, not just step porn. My guess is that people have to put have to put step in it for legal reasons, for like obscenity reasons.
That's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair.
It's just a disclaimer. So I think the thing is people are actually quite into incest. I think incest is very popular.
Talk about that. Yeah. So most people will gut reaction say, no, not me. No one I know. Totally wrong. Can you discuss that a bit further?
It's definitely people you know. I mean, like it depends on the kind of incest, but like incidence rates are like 10 to 20% of the population, at least according to my survey. I did like a survey, which I cite a lot, but I just want to, when I claim it's of the population, I'm based on that survey, just to be clear. But I'm on sort of the biology side, or like, I don't know, I'm saying using biology and genetics is sort of a catch-all for like the inevitable thing that in your brain. It's possible maybe there's something that happens hormonally in the womb. I don't know. But in my survey, my sample size is around 500,000. And I asked people a whole bunch of stuff about their childhood and also about a whole bunch of fetishes, and almost nothing correlated. Including like, being verbally abused by various genders, it just doesn't seem to have a strong impact. So my guess is it's a lot of post-rationalization. But also, my theory right now is that like fetishes are sort of like the thing that fuels a fetish is sort of ingrained, but like the shape that this can take depends on the culture. So like if you're very into like the thing that arouses you is like I'm having sex with like somebody I shouldn't be. Like what counts as shouldn't be like might vary depending on the culture.
Understood. So there might be these large blocks of shouldn't be, and then there's this a trans swimmer or something, and the entire world weighs in with their opinion, and then you see the spike in trans-related porn, or for why it has. I believe incest porn has been on the rise, or like the step stuff, or maybe that was just discovered as a marketing tool that could make it appealing and non-legal. Do you have any insight into that particular one? Why? I don't know. When I was a young man looking at my first porn website, I don't remember seeing that kind of stuff, and I'm aware of it now. Do you have any idea what the uptick might be related to?
I do not.
Okay.
I wish I did. Like I said, it's not correlated with anything too interesting. It is a lot more correlated with not being cis. So like non-cis people tend to have greater interest in trans fetishes. Sorry, I'm moving a chair. But non-cis people have greater interest in like most things. So it's not that weird.
Got it. And that isn't, from your understanding, necessarily causal, that because they're this or that. It might just be like, look, if you already had to accept this thing about yourself, which is that you are not cisgendered, probably you've worked through some degree of shame or have some degree of openness to other things. So it sounds unclear what is causing what and what is just correlated.
No, I think it's absolutely causal. I don't think this is
you do think it's causal?
Thing. Well, I think that like, for example, like trans people tend to be like much more autistic, for example. And I think that there's just something in the brain, like autism, like also correlates with interesting fetishes. So I think there's just like some sort of interesting thing going on in the brain that also causes like a very specific category of like fetish types that people are interested in. I mean, this with intense compassion. I'm like, some people hear me say this and they're like, oh, trans people are freaks. I'm like, no, not at all. Fetishes are super cool and interesting. And it's like super fascinating that there's something going on in the brain that like causes gender dysphoria and seems to also be related somehow to having like really unusual fetishes.
So where I go, and I defer to you because you've done the research, I am so tempted to narrativize this and I guess be one of those post-rationalized people who goes, that you saw this thing when you were little. It was just they slapped your hand and, then you weren't able to get that forbidden fruit. And then in life it goes out. And I guess it's because I do it to myself and I go, where does this, I'm fairly vanilla. But I look at the things that I want and I go, where does this come from? Is this from a one-to-one desire for this thing to happen? Or am I looking for something underneath that?
I'm not necessarily against narratives. I'm against like, I wrote this article, which I don't remember, but like I call it like sky problems and earth problems. Yeah. And like sky problems are when we think of things as like psychological and sort of under our control. Like, oh, if you only looked at this differently, oh, if you only applied more will. And then earth problems are things that are kind of not like that. Like, oh, you have a digestive problem, or, oh, you have schizophrenia. It's not you, it's your brain. And I think like the correct way of doing it is like is to not be limited. I think a lot of people like limit themselves to one thing. Like, oh, if you're having anxiety, you're like, I must narrativize this. I must come up with some sort of like intellectual explanation for why this is like my issue. But like maybe you just need to stop eating caffeine. I don't know. And just like being open and flexible to like different like categories of explanations for what's going on, I think is the important part. Like it's fine if you have like a narrative about like your childhood or whatever. It's just like also like keep an eye on other things. Like just notice that like maybe there are biological explanations. I don't know. Like be loose, be light-footed.
I love that because as I look at my own life and I look at other people, I see sometimes they are able to do healing, improvement through external means, and it makes a lasting positive impact. Even, some people will get plastic surgery and it's like their personal issue is just gone. They're not upset. There's a book, Psycho-Cybernetics. It's like some people would walk out of there feeling incredible. Then you have on the flip side people who can't stop getting plastic surgery. It doesn't solve the inner issue. And it's not should one or shouldn't one get plastic surgery or should one or shouldn't one narrativize. It's pay attention. Is this working? And if not, maybe try a different domain, like you mentioned, diet or getting a good night's sleep or going for exercise to, address the issue that is persistent in your life.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Just keep an open mind. I think this is my issue with a lot of like the post-rationality community is that it feels like they're like sort of overcorrecting into a very like sky problem lens. I'm like, sometimes just it's okay for to view things through that, but just like don't exclude the other because it's all interconnected. We don't exist with just one or the other. Like it's this part of the same thing.